All right, welcome everybody to Breakout Room D. My name is Vaz. I'm with the FinOps Foundation, and I'm here to introduce Andrew and Beth. They're here to talk about governance and policy in FinOps. And with that, I'll take it away.
All right. How's everybody doing today, all right? So there's some snacks out there. I hope everybody's all sugared up. So maybe just before me and Beth jump in, just a little bit about ourselves and kind of what we do at JP. So I actually graduated college with a finance degree, went to graduate school for a finance degree, and I'm doing cloud engineering. So that's why I'm here. For me, it's kind of the coming together of two disciplines, right, that never really came together before. So, so my day job is to actually migrate apps to the public cloud. We have private cloud as well. And I got involved with the foundation a little over a year ago, and then we joined as members, and here we are today. So that's me. Beth?
Beth Marki. I'm the product owner for cloud financial management for JPMC. And what that really means is you can think of our team as the technology enablement group for all things FinOps, firm-wide. We have a lot of involvement across all of the lines, working with our partners in all directions.
All right, so first thing, oops, I went the wrong way. Actually, let me just start on this slide. So we named this thing governance and policy. It is a lot about that, but there's a lot of other things in here as well. Think of today as hearing the best practices around some of the things outside the world of FinOps that will influence how you do FinOps that you may have not thought about. So we're going to connect some dots. And then we'll go into some, I'll call it more governance-related stuff. We also needed a title that would get through our compliance folks. So this was fairly generic and didn't scare them away completely. All right, I'll go through the agenda. All right, so the first thing, the cloud strategy your firm has, right? You may not think about it, but is your firm driving cloud from a central perspective, right? Where they want to control everything? That usually comes with more friction, right? Versus, is it going to be completely federated? Do the lines of business, do the teams, are they allowed to kind of onboard without a lot of hurdles, right? You don't ask them how much they're going to spend, what exactly they're building. And then somewhere in the middle, right? But clearly, if you're trying to do FinOps, you want to actually be as proactive as you can, right? You want to understand what they're building, and you'll have a lot less work to do later when they're actually in dev and then in prod. So look at that and actually try to influence, right, and bring these kind of ideas to the table, right? It's not just about the risk guys or SRE driving all this, right? It's about, FinOps as a seat at the table is just important. And if you can do it, proactively, you'll be much better off. Okay. So now you talked about the cloud strategy. So now, how does actually a developer, what approvals do they need to actually onboard, right? So if you've enabled them to just go, well, you're probably going to have a pretty big mess on all fronts, but you'll have speed. Or do you have 50 steps to approve, right? And I think all of us have somewhere in the middle. You have to ask questions about what is your architecture. Clearly, if you're using serverless and Lambdas and managed services, you're not going to have as many challenges with capacity, right? Maybe you'll be able to focus on 30, 40, 50% of the, what they've built rather than all of it. Do they have cost estimates, right? And we all know when you're doing, building cloud apps, it's really a best guess, but a guess is better than nothing to have, right? Because you could start this conversation there. What are their timeframes? Is it completely open-ended? Yeah, someday we'll get there. I put that little sarcastic comment, but I mean, you really want to have some guidelines, right? And I think most of us will have something, but 6 months to 2 years, I'm not sure that's really a timeline. And then this last bullet is probably, you're going to hear this a lot through this whole presentation. How long is your spend, measure, learn cycle, right? So if you're on, flatline type of accounting, it's 1 year, maybe 6 months, right? On the cloud, if you can do it in a week, magical things will happen, right? Because you're looking at your spend, you're making adjustments, you're telling your finance people, you have business, right, changes factored in, and then all of a sudden, magically, right, you'll be managing your expenses better, right, your FinOps better along the way. It won't be this big bang where, oops, something happened. It's very hard, right? And a lot of that is driven because it's the variable world. It's not fixed anymore. Okay. Will you, Beth?
So the finance stuff. Everybody knows we talk about setting initial budgets and all that stuff Andrew already mentioned, and it's one of the most fun exercises we all have, right? But we put the primary line on here about variable versus fixed. Most obvious thing, every single person in this room already understands what that means. The people that don't understand, though, unfortunately, are the folks that are really early in their migrations, your technology leaders, as they're not necessarily thinking about it, your executive suite, and they don't really know what that means. They know it's variable, but do they really understand how variable? And it can get pretty scary, as we all know. We all build for those events and watch out. So we do keep it on as a topic because we want to bring in very specific examples of when things go right and when things go wrong and use those as learning examples. And that leads you into that broader conversation about bubble costs. What does that mean? Why do I have to worry about it? Again, here, you guys all know what that means. Explaining to people why they need to care about it and ultimately care about their total cost of ownership. And what does that mean for them? What does that translate to in terms of an activity? And those activities that really start to get you, we're all excited about figuring out how much am I going to spend in a new place? How do I figure that out? It's big, it's confusing. We're still arguing about architecture and what are my best options there. But ultimately, it comes back to it's that full, complete cycle. Okay, great. So what are we worried about? We're worried about leaving all of the costs in your primary location, the location you're moving from. And it's the stuff that nobody ever wants to do. It's the I don't want to because it is scary. It takes time. It's certainly less fun than playing with my new toys in my new environment, but it's costing us generally a lot of money, so we pay a lot of attention to that. And we really emphasize that as a core tenet of operational excellence, continuing to hit those items. We want to clean up the old opportunities to spend in a new place in a meaningful way, but you essentially can end up in a spot of self-funding. How do you make that conversation as easy as possible? This is where we talk everything about transparency and ensuring that you're showing the same exact number to your application owner as to your CIO, and they're very clear on what those objectives are and what good looks like. We hit on here about pricing solutions and those discounts. Give yourself a gift for the future and make it as simple as humanly possible. Pricing for cloud and figuring out what your application is going to do or how that's going to change over time, 100% is going to take up a lot of your time, but put it to the side and make the discounting structure as simple as possible. Everybody should have that in their back pocket. Your executive should know what that is, top of mind, and never have to come and say, what is that Rubik's Cube of difficulty that we've made? Finance and business management folks, they are a huge part of this journey. As much as an investment that you can make into this organization, uplift them and take them beyond the responsibility for a one-time event on a finance or in a budget cycle, get them closer to the technology, speaking the same language, close those barriers and start to connect those dots. And who is left to do the rest of the dot connecting but your FinOps practitioners. They are the ones that come and fill in across every single persona you have and make those conversations easier, whether it's talking about a business case or building something new for a new budget outlook, really being able to come together as a community and have meaningful conversations and get onto the business of running the business.
All right.
So everybody knows you need a tool for showback and chargeback.
Oops. 1.24. There you go.
And they don't want to talk about tools. You've got a whole entire lineup of folks outside that want to talk to you about what the tools are, and you will make your own decision depending upon where you are in your journey and what makes sense. You're going to buy a tool probably early in your journey. You might get to a point of complexity, and maybe I need to build a tool and do something special for the complexity of your organization. That you're also going to have additional considerations. You're talking about, I want to continue to provide the native environments for our engineering community. So now you're talking about multiple tool sets, and you're getting up to that average of what we reference, 4 on average that everybody has, different tool sets. The much as possible to consolidate that down to make it as simple as possible is obviously always the goal. But then if you've gone the next step and said, I really want to be multi-cloud, then you really have some problems to solve for. I've seen some great examples over the last 24 hours of how folks are doing that in different organizations. but it really is something that you have to crack for yourself, figure out what the prioritization is, and really work on that normalization of data. That will get you to your decision point. So yes, you're going to do all of the above as you move through that cycle. Consider your firm's sustainability goals. You will have alignment with a lot of the goals inside of your programs. Bring those conversations together. They inform each other, and it isn't just a standalone item. The closer they come, the easier it gets. We'll continue to push and pull on our partners to provide the meaningful data sets that we want. We could have a whole conversation about that. And ultimately, it's about making it a simple, transparent conversation for your purchasing agents, which are your developers. They're purchasing and making choices every single day that will cost you something. The easier it is for them to see, the better. Again, close the cycle on the spend, measure, and learn. Fail fast, learn, and continue.
All right, so dev and test environments, right? I mean, this is the easiest area to go after, right? And it really shouldn't be a really difficult conversation. Once again, you need to make it easy for your developers to do the right thing, right? So you all know by now, right? If you actually shut off dev and test when you don't need it, you save 70%, right? You don't have to worry about optimizing dev and test or doing all kinds of stuff. So that really shouldn't be about a business case anymore. It should be like, just do it. And with the SRE mindset, which I think is very, very akin to the FinOps mindset, right? Automate as much as you can, right? We built a lot of tools to help our developers do this. We spent a lot of energy making them do it. And I'm going to talk, when I talk about infrastructure as code, we build it into those solutions, right? We don't, in the beginning, we had to go follow and run after them and follow them and make them do it, but now it's just built in, right? And if, for example, business hours isn't good enough, let them change it, right? But turning it off shouldn't be an option. Talk about using Spot, right? So for dev, maybe it doesn't save as much money as it used to, right? Being able to get instances, that are cheaper. But clearly, if you can do that, why not, right? Not all apps will use it, but whatever benefit you can get, you should go after. And the last two is, this isn't really about name and shame or putting somebody on a bad list, but if somebody's doing the right behavior, they're good. Right? It's the folks who are completely ignoring it. People gaming the system, right? They're turning the code on for an hour to turn off dev and test so they get the check, right? Those are the folks you want to go after because it's easy saves, and it's very hard, to defend why you haven't done it. Okay, the other big area is right sizing. So whatever you have left in dev and test, and obviously prod, which is a little bit different discussion, but generally you get recommendations coming in from all your cloud providers about how to optimize, right? And they keep coming in, and they keep coming in, right? So I don't think that's a bad thing, but you really do need to actually probably help those decisions a little bit, right? Get them to the right developers so they can action on them, right? There are tools out there that will help you manage some of this stuff, like suppress. Right, some of the cloud providers offer that as a native service, right? Suppress the alerts for 6 months, come back later. But try to make it easy for them to actually take those recommendations. Because as you can read there, if you give them a lot of false positives constantly, they'll just shut it off. They'll just ignore it, whatever you do. And I threw the CPU mem one in there because on-prem, right, we had private data centers, cloud didn't exist, it didn't really work. 10% utilization, let's go after it. It didn't really work, right? So it doesn't really work on public cloud either. Right? So really think about those recommendations that are driven by AI. They're intelligent. They're usually good, but sometimes they're not. So just think about how to make that whole process easier. And then I would use the 80-20 rule, right? Focus on the big items. And if they're really large, put them in their backlog just like any other piece of work. Right? Don't be the one just following up with them. Just say, listen, this is part of your day job now. And that will, they'll get smaller and smaller, and then eventually they'll be doing it on their own. And then prod, right? Prod's very different. Right? You really can't mess around with prod, right? Now you're talking about doing things like unit economics and really understanding your revenue versus your cost. So, you have to think a little differently there and work with the business to really understand where they're going. Their architecture is going to drive a lot of their ability to scale up and down seamlessly, right? But it is a different environment. You have to treat it differently. Okay, so this one is around lessons we learned around blueprints and patterns you may have heard. There's 4 or 5 main use cases that you need to deliver, right? Microservices, ML, data analytics, data lake. If you can build those solutions as patterns or blueprints, build in SRE, build in FinOps from the start, you're going to be much better off, right? This is the proactive side of doing FinOps. And it's not perfect, right? You're not going to be able to do everything. But like I said, it starts them thinking about those things, right? And then as you get more of advancements in, depending on how you do these blueprints, you can upgrade them, just like you upgrade the products and the other components in the blueprints. And once you make it part of their day job, right, it doesn't become a separate task. It's just what they do. So building it into how they do their business today, that's why I put that second bullet in about pipelines. Like, make it part of that. It may not be easy initially, but make it an option, right? Like, I'll use an example from AWS, right? They have Graviton. If you give them a choice of Intel or AMD or Graviton, they'll pick one. But if you force them on one, then they're going to use it, right? So it really, every company's going to kind of do what they want there, but make it easy for them. Don't make them have to go and request it and fight for it. Because the proactive is really much easier. And then lastly, actually think about having cloud parties. I don't know if any of you have. Anybody have cloud parties in here? In their firm? Couple? So these are great ways to get everybody in a room together, put their day job to the side, and focus on whatever is the activity you want, right? So we have cloud parties for adoption, for FinOps, for SRE, and it really enables them to go back to their desk with real skills, right? This isn't watching videos. This is they bring in their app, and over the course of a day or two or three, they're going to do some delivery, right? And we just did one recently on FinOps, and those teams left knowing exactly what they needed to do. All right.
Central FinOps teams managing firm-wide discounts. This is not a new headline, but I would emphasize the opportunity to really work with your finance partners and decide what your risk portfolio will look like. The management of the amount of coverage that you want to have, understanding what your current infrastructure pieces are, and potentially, and perhaps more importantly, where are your largest applications going to be going in the future, and do you need to plan accordingly? That will change your decisioning for a future RI purchase, a future savings plan purchase, and really looking at do I have a steady state coming on? Do I have to understand my seasonality and what those pieces are? So again, the closer the finance community is with the biggest drivers in the business and what technology choices will be today versus tomorrow, really continues to inform what those choices are and gives you an opportunity to really balance that in a meaningful way for something that makes sense for your business. Thank you. Driving top-down awareness. The visibility at the CIO and CTO level to reporting of opportunities can be a highly contentious conversation. It really depends on what the culture is, how it's managed internally, but it's also a huge opportunity. Of course, you do the standard tops-down messaging for buy-in to FinOps in totality, but it's also about starting to report where those opportunities are, who's doing well versus who's lagging, and then what are you culturally willing to do about those decisions. It makes an opening so that it isn't just a FinOps organization that's saying, hey, you should or consider or you should do this thing. It should be the company at large that has an understanding about what those opportunities are. Sometimes they're meaningful and will work. Sometimes they won't. We talked about the false flags. But in general, there's usually an opportunity. There's something hiding under there. And it is about how you talk about it, how you make that transparent inside of your organizations. Of course, we always talk about how do you make something part of a conversation. Is it a good behavior that you want rewarded? Is it a bad behavior that you want penalized? And that's a strong word. But in this case, we're really talking about repeat offenders. If you've been on this list for a long time, not engaged in the conversation, it will be up to you to decide. Do I want to engage them at a high level? Because yes, it's going to show up in a CIO level report. You want to have had a ton of opportunity to show that we have can close that gap in understanding, or at least where are we trying to get people to focus and how we want them to address it. And again, it's about driving that clarity on overall bubble costs and how you manage that. And I'm going to hit it again. Turn off your old and crusty stuff. That conversation never gets old. I'm always amazed how much we can find. Communicate with your FinOps practitioners community. We have a very active community, and it has served us really well. And we have learned as an organization as we continue to develop that community. meet as often as makes sense, whether it's twice a month, on a monthly basis, maybe after you're up and running, but also it has to do with the complexity. How much are you changing your environments? Are we doing new things from a technology perspective? And it becomes a learning environment. And it goes both ways. You're showcasing items about new tools and capabilities. You're asking for that active feedback loop. And that will come not just from a central space. You will have practitioners in your lines of business or individual business units that will bring an item up, and it'll be something that will end up driving a whole entire community. So we do come together and bring that regular sharing of information. And yeah, some of the best stuff will come out from your partners. It's not a one and done. It's an opportunity.
All right, and then real quick, so we want to save some time for questions. Don't forget about the folks who are product owners, right? So I spend a lot of time with folks. We have a whole bunch of them on how they build products to offer internally as services, right, to all the developers at JP Morgan, right? So we spend a lot of time with them making sure they bake it in as well, so they just can consume a product that's already FinOps aware, as well as all the other day two type stuff. All right, so let's jump to questions.
That's awesome. Thanks, Andrew and Beth. Some great information there and strategies for managing your FinOps practice. We're going to try something a little new. If you're not familiar with the question and answer queue, I've thrown it at 5 of my colleagues, and only 1 has been heard. So 4 to 5 of you will be fine. Who wants to start us off with questions?
So at my company, we're multi-cloud. We're in Azure, GCP, and soon AWS. In GCP, we had a big query get kind of out of control, and we had a big cost anomaly.
Yep.
So there's been some talk about guardrails. Are you in favor of quotas and limits? I've heard that they are complicated and hard to work with. Or is it better to focus on anomaly detection and notification?
Yeah, we had a big debate about hard limits, still going on. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you got to focus on anomaly detection and making sure your SRE team is in the loop so they can also participate. Because shutting something off with some knowledge is a lot better than shutting down. Now listen, dev and test environments, you probably could consider hard limits, but it is tough. So I would focus on more making sure everybody who needs to know knows, and then you make a good decision.
We got a question back here.
Did you guys gain any insights from those, let's say, repeat offenders before they got on the bad list that you might be able to share? Like, was there something around education? They just didn't want to participate? Like, what are some of the reasons why some of your engineers or developers don't want to participate?
Some of it is knowledge base. 100%. We've been operating in a bubble of, really focused on our business goals and haven't been paying attention to it. You'll get that as a part of the conversation. So it usually just means it's an education opportunity for them. Some of it can be cultural in that we have a business objective that will override any other thing that you're going to tell me, and that can certainly be a choice for somebody, but it should be a meaningful choice, not something that happened on accident.
Yeah, I would say if it's 1 app out of 10 that they have that they're, then we're good, right? It's really somebody who does nothing, doesn't respond, and we want to understand because, like anything else, these things do, we manage by scorecard in a lot of places, and the time that you have the most, I guess, compassion from them is before they get, put on the really bad list. So if you put them there, they better be repeat offenders and not really have, much of a good answer.
Got a question over here.
I was hoping maybe you could describe the cloud parties a little bit more, if those are in person, or are you doing a hybrid, or are they remote?
Yeah, so we started them as in person, and then COVID hit, and we went to full remote, and now we're back to hybrid. The key thing is when you have everybody at the cloud party, so you not only have the developers building their apps, you have support people from all the different disciplines there to help, right? So it really creates there's no other work going on there except focusing on your app. So it creates a connection with all these people now that you have. So when you go back to your desk, you know somebody to call to ask for help, right? You don't have to put a ticket in anymore. So I think the hybrid works as well because a lot of our folks do both. Like they'll do one in person and then they'll do a hybrid one, right? But it creates a network, a connection that wouldn't otherwise be there because you've lived through with something with somebody for 2 or 3 days. And it's hard to put a value on that. Well, we run a lot of them, and then, we have a lot of folks that go through them, and we have folks that want to go to them to do their work because they can focus.
Any other questions for Andrew, Beth? I'll get you to do the clicker one time if you still have it handy. Forward. Perfect. Any other questions for Andrew and Beth? Yep. I'm going to do a long one now. You ready?
Hello. You did talk about like a central team for managing the enterprise or the contract and things like the discounts, right? So how do you motivate all the business capability areas to
Pull it a little
kind
closer.
It's hard to hear.
There you go. Thank you.
How do you motivate all the business capability areas to kind of go with the like RIs and the capacity reservations and things like that? Because some teams might be doing those, and but the enterprise wide, so everyone is getting the benefit, but not just them, right? So how do you manage that? So
You want to repeat the question so that?
Yeah, I think it's more about how do we determine how to do RIs, right? And how do we manage those type of requests coming in holistically. You want to take that one?
Yes, there's a combination of things that happen there. So we will generally talk about evaluating everything in totality and knowing where your opportunities are. But when a request comes in from an application owner or a business unit that says, I think I have a good potential proposal here, that'll take a lot of forms. It'll either be I understood this is a way I can save money and I don't know how we're saving money today. So that's an opportunity for us to have a different conversation because we're already doing a lot of those things on their behalf and they may not actually have full clarity. So that's one scenario. The other is they've gone a little bit further along and said, I really see this and I really think that it should be quite precise and this is my opportunity. So in that case, we'll come in and open up a full business review of everything that they're doing. We'll look at what they've done historically. We do not make purchases based on what you think your future architecture and opportunity is going to be. We're really looking for somebody to prove where they are in their application's journey and show that there is a distinct need, not an anticipation of a need. So it really is about coming together to support them in that journey. And then we'll come back and do a revisit. It's like maybe you're not there, but you have your plans. We'll come back in a quarter and talk about it. So it really depends on where they're starting.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. Thanks, Andrew. Can we just give them a round of applause?
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.